Why does God use symbols? Why not just come out plainly and just say, Jesus is going to come, he's going to suffer, he's going to die, he's going to take on your sins? Why does God use all these wonderful symbols in the Bible, which, quite frankly, sometimes can be a little bit confusing, sometimes even a little daunting? And I know a classic example I've said to many times in sermons before, and I'll just repeat it again because you repeat it often enough, people remember it. If I was born blind and never seen before, and I ask you to describe to me the colour red, could you do it? It's impossible. If I've never seen, unless you've experienced it, you can't. I can say red like an apple or red like blood, but if I'd never seen it, how could you convey it? Words are not perfect. So what God used was something that the universe had never seen or experienced before. That's suffering, death, and self-sacrifice. So we find in the sanctuary that that's what we're going to see. And God uses symbols that sometimes people haven't find them a little bit confusing. Like, for example, you see that this is Egyptian hieroglyphics. You know, for years they had no idea what this meant. Centuries and centuries, they had no idea. The language was lost. But if it wasn't for the Rosetta Stone, found back in the 1799, found that with the Egyptian hieroglyphics, they found other languages which was Greek, that they could understand, and therefore they could now interpret, and therefore now all the Egyptian hieroglyphs locked to them and the mysteries that surrounded them. So we find when we go through the Bible with all these prophecies and with all the symbols and all the things that we see in the Bible, they can be a bit daunting. And sometimes they can be a little bit off-putting. You know, what does all this mean? You know, these beasts and the dragons. More confusing. You see a woman standing upon the moon with a dragon trying to take her child. All these things. You know, what on earth do all these things mean? How can we understand them? You might even be tempted to say, well, I can never understand these prophecies or these symbols. They're so just too complex. And a lot of people just close the book and go, it's just too hard. You know, was Daniel, was he born with this knowledge? No, Daniel chapter 1 verse 17, it tells us already that as for these 4 children, Daniel, Shadrach, gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in visions and dreams. So did they have that naturally themselves, or was it given? It was given. It was given to them. It's not something that they just naturally attained. It was given to them. So likewise, in James 1, chapter 5, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. So if you don't understand something, what is God saying you have to do? Just ask. How many of us ask? And how many of us just might ask once and go, oh, well, I don't understand, close the book and just never go? How many of us ask with perseverance? You know, we sometimes study, we don't even study the Bible, and when we do, we just do it with such light carelessness that we just really don't understand these things. But really, these are some things we need to understand. I mean, our lives depend upon it, doesn't it? You know, so a good rule of thumb, of course, is we know that when we see some of these Bibles and symbols, we just can't pick these out and just go, well, this is what I think it means. God has guaranteed he will give you the answers inside his word. So if you want to know what a symbol means, God is going to explain it somewhere. So we see in 2 Peter 1:20 says, knowing this first, that no prophecy of Scripture is any private interpretation, meaning a prophecy over here is not going to be different from a prophecy over here. They're going to have a common theme. It's the same with symbols. That when you have a symbol here, it'll be explained somewhere here, maybe even in the same prophecy, like in Daniel, explains some of the prophecies self-explanatory. So we find here in Isaiah 28 verse 13, as I said, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. You know, God could have just given you one prophecy with all this symbols list and gone, there you go. That's what it all means. But he didn't. He put a little symbol over here and he put the answer to it over there. Sometimes he puts it in the same chapter. Sometimes he puts it in another book over here. Why do you think God did that? Well, I'll give you a reason why I think so. Do you like reading this book? Generally, yes. But I'm going to, yes, of course. But I'm going to put this challenge to you. How often do you read it compared to watching the television, doing your job, doing other things? Would you say you read this more than you do your other things, or you do the other things more than you do this? If you're like me, it's other things. So what happens is, God knows that we're bone lazy, and we will do the bare minimum. So what he does is he gives us a clue here, so we go and read the book. So he sprinkles it a little bit here, so we read the Old Testament, which we neglect. Because if we didn't put some of the symbols in the Old Testament, no one would even look at it. A lot of Christians nowadays only have the New Testament and think that's it, that's all we need. But if you take out the Old Testament, you're losing all those keys and understandings and all the valuable lessons, really, that would unlock the New Testament for you. And God, of course, has signs and dates. You know, God has, in all these amazing prophecies and all these things of where we are in time, God has given us two methods. One, he's given us dates. So in Daniel 8:13, he says, "How long shall the vision be?" And then we find in verse 14, it says, "He said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed." Hence where I'm going. But then, that's the longest time prophecy you'll ever find in the Bible. And it gives us specific dates. So God couldn't be any more clearer, could he? So really, when the Christian asks, why has God taken so long between when Christ died to now, really the Bible answers us with this one prophecy. This is the reason why God has taken so long and why we're still here. And of course, when that date passes, God hasn't given us the date of when he comes back. Why do you think God didn't give us that date? Jesus will be back on the 23rd of October on 2050, because he knows full well that we'll take it easy, and then we'll have the 11th hour, the thief on the cross confession just before I die or just before he comes back. We'll confess. So God has given us signs instead from that date onwards of his nearness of his coming. So we find that there is two methods to know where we are in time. Because really, when you stop and look at it, the 2,300-day prophecy is one of the greatest prophecies ever given in the Bible. Because it gives us a specific time of where we are. Because we can see here, just a quick, all right down through to 1844, because God gave us the starting date, and he gave us an exact time, and all these other prophecies that fill in the middle. Where are you and I in that prophetic time? Yeah, we're past 1844 now. Ellen White, when she was around, 1844 for her was a living reality. And all the years subsequently which she lived, she was living in the great expectation of Christ's second coming. We know that the Bible sort of helps us find out, some people have no idea when the time of the end starts, but the Bible explains itself that the time of the end comes really from 1798. So from there onwards, we're living at the time of the end, and the time of the end is momentous events. But right on time, knowledge increased, and William Miller came with his expose on Daniel chapter 2,300-day prophecy, and he's combined it with the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. And right on time, he gave us the time when he expected Jesus to come. But of course, there were many gainsayers and naysayers that said you can't possibly know that Jesus. What's a classic verse that comes to mind that should have given him something to worry about? Wasn't there the Bible verse that no man knoweth the day nor the hour of Jesus coming? And people were saying that to him, but he's there going, but I know something's going to happen, and it's got to be Jesus coming in 1844. Originally 1843, but with the dates he changed, he realised it was 1844. So what was his problem? He was so sure. He was so sure that he was coming. People were so certain. But you have to remember, up until then, were people studying their Bibles? The Bibles were pretty sadly neglected. People would give them lip service, read a few verses here and there, but really they really never understood the prophecies nor delved into the prophecies like William Miller did. And was he a theologian? William Miller was not a theologian, he was a farmer, basically. And yet God uses the most simple instruments. The problem William Miller had was sometimes he just misinterpreted one or two of the symbols. He thought the earth, when he said the sanctuary shall be cleansed, he thought it meant the earth. But really, later on down the track, we discovered that it wasn't the earthly sanctuary that was being cleansed, it was the heavenly. You know, Bible symbols can sometimes be a little tricky, but really there's a fundamental principle that we have. So we find here, for example, let's have a look at one I like to use. It's called the lamp. What does a lamp symbolise in the Bible? There are many different symbols you can use, and I was surprised. I just usually did it with this one. Psalms 119:105 says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." And I thought, well, that's pretty well much what it is. But I was doing a Bible study, and I did an exhaustive one, and I thought, what do all the symbols? I should just expect to see, you know, many verses just saying the word is a lamp. I was quite shocked. There are other verses depicting other things. For example, in 2 Samuel 22:29 says, "For thou art my lamp, O Lord, and the Lord will lighten my darkness." So what does a lamp symbolise here? Represents God, Christ. Yes. Well, I found that a bit funny, but here's even more. In Proverbs 6:23, "For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs and instruction for the way of life." So we can see now a lamp is also represented by the 10 Commandments and the law. Well, there's still more. In Isaiah 62 verse 1 it says, "For Zion's sake I will not hold my peace, for Jerusalem's sake I will not rest until the righteousness thereof go forth as brightness, and the salvation thereof as a lamp that burneth." So you can see a lamp is also a symbol of salvation. Why one symbol have so many different meanings? Why do you think God would do something like that? Wouldn't that just cause confusion? Well, not really. When you stop and look at it, if you plug that into the parable of the 10 virgins, it actually just tells you a different story using the same symbol. Now, we know in the parable of the 10 virgins that you saw that they took with them lamps and they went to meet the bridegroom. Now, if you plug some of those symbols back in, it still actually makes sense. So, for example, if they took the word and went to meet the bridegroom, makes sense, doesn't it? But it also says they also took Jesus with them when they went to meet the bridegroom. Still makes sense. They took the commandments with them. Now, these are virgins. So who do you think it's talking about? These virgins, who do they represent in Bible prophecy? We as Adventists should know they represent who in particular? The church. Which church? It's this church, the Seventh-day Adventist, because they are virgins, they are unadulterated. So we can see that this also backs up the fact that these are commandment-keeping virgins. And they have the plan of salvation. The plan of salvation, where do we find that? Because it's the title of my sermon. We find it in the sanctuary. So we see these virgins also have the sanctuary message. So you can see how it all fits. With one symbol, Jesus does many stories, many facets just out of one simple symbol. And it's just out of the parable of the 10 virgins. So we see Jesus is the Word, the Lord, the commandments, the law, and salvation. All revolves around Jesus. So let's have a look at the sanctuary, shall we? In Psalm 77 verse 7 says, "Thy way, O Lord, is in the sanctuary, who is a great God as our God." And Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." So in the sanctuary we find Jesus everywhere. And just as a quick overview, we'll have a look. So here we have the tabernacle of Moses, and we can have the children of Israel encamped about it. Now, when I was doing this sermon, I'm thinking, where do I start and where do I stop? Because it is so deep and so many facets you can go into. I could go into the sacrificial service. We could talk about the bits of furniture, the altar of sacrifice, the laver. We could talk about the building itself and the most holy place, going into the building. There's so many different facets you could talk about in the sanctuary, even with the coverings. All of them mean something. But what do they mean? Now, if I tried to go into every single one of these, how long do you think I'll be here? You'd all be corpses by the time I'd finished. It'd be, it's just a deep study. For Ellen White says that we'll be studying this subject for eternity. That's a long time. That's a long time. So, she even saw Abraham going and still studying in the sanctuary. So it's something that we're going to be studying for all eternity. But what I've really going to focus on today is really not so much the furniture, nor am I going to focus on everything that is in it, because I'd be here all day. Because the holy place, the most holy place, the outer court, all have their meanings. So if you're unfamiliar with it, the outer court is all about justification, Christ's blood. The holy place is all about sanctification, meaning to make you holy. And then the most holy is all about glorification. You get a new body. Won't that be good? A new body and your character. The character will be cleansed. That's the cleansing of the sanctuary. You know, I could have gone into the plan of redemption through the feast days. You know, I found this really something, so I'm just going to quickly mention it. You know, we have a look at the feast days, and we have a look where Jesus died in the Passover, the burial of the baptism of Christ in his burial, the resurrection, the first fruits. You have the day of Pentecost 50 days later, and right on time, that's when Pentecost came. And then you move into the holy place, where in Revelation it talks about the 7 churches, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets. Did you know that the 7 churches is the first piece of furniture in the sanctuary that Revelation talks about? And it's the 7 churches. But then it talks about the 7 seals. Guess where the 7 seals come from? John got them, and they were opened from the table of showbread. He was handed off the table. And then the 7 trumpets, believe it or not, in Revelation 8:4-1, you can check the verses. The 7 trumpets come from, was handed off the altar of incense. So you can see that everything up until Revelation 11 is just everything being done inside the holy place. And then we have the Day of Atonement, of course, where the sanctuary's been cleansed. And then from there it's 1844 onwards, because we have that date from Daniel. And that goes through to, which is when the Feast of Tabernacles, which is for the new heavens and the new earth. So we find that in Revelation 21 and 22. So we find that everything between Revelation 12 through to 20 is all about the most holy place. Mark of the beast, etc. The sealing of the 144,000. All that's in. I could have done this whole sermon on that. But my focus today will be just on something that seems pretty innocuous, and that's just the pillars of the sanctuary. That's all I'm going to be looking at today, because I'll be here all day. With the holy place, the most holy place, and the outer court, all have pillars. As you can see, the little dots going around there are symbolic of pillars that are around the sanctuary. We have pillars as you come in through the gates on the east. We have 5 pillars. You can't really see them there. They're not really clear on this, but there are 5 pillars going into the sanctuary. And then we have 4 pillars going into the most holy place. You know, God does things for a reason. And this is what I'm here to share with you today. I found this quite amazing. So my focus will be first on the outer court, and then it will be on the sanctuary itself. So first of all, this gives us a description of what is happening in the outer court. In Exodus 38 verse 9 to 10, it says we have a total of 60 pillars going around the sanctuary, holding up a fine linen wall. Now, all these things mean something. So what do they mean? Well, first of all, what does a pillar mean? A pillar in the Bible is a symbol, just like everything else in the sanctuary. And what it does is a pillar is a symbol of a witness. Now, how do I know that? It's because the Bible tells me so. And clear, unequivocal. So we find in Isaiah 19 verse 19, it says, a pillar as of the border thereof unto the Lord, and it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord. So what is a pillar? It's a sign or a witness. And in Genesis 31:52 it says, this heap be a witness, and this pillar be a witness. So whenever we see a pillar anywhere, we know that this means it's a witness. Okay, so let's, whoops, I jumped the gun. So let's have a look at that. There were 60 of them, so now we have to look at the numbers. You guys should be familiar with the number 10 by now. I think I shouldn't have to really rattle off too much. But we shall quickly go over it. What does the number 10 mean? We find, let's just pick one or two. Let's have a look with Daniel. Daniel's the easiest one. How many days was Daniel there tested on the health message? 10 days. That's not a coincidence. And when King Nebuchadnezzar tested them, how many times smarter were they? 10. How many commandments are there to test our character? 10. You start to see the pattern? How much tithe are we supposed to give? 10%. That's a test. How many virgins were tested at the end? 10. That's the reason why there was 10. So you can see now that really the number 10 means there's a test. So we're finding something out already about these pillars. They're a witness. They're going to be tested. But there's another number, of course, because there's 60 of them. So what does the number 6 mean? So let the Bible explain again. Let's go to Genesis 1:26. What day was man made on? He created all the, and his crowning act was man. And Exodus 20 verse 9 and 31 verses 15 tells us, in 6 days you shall what? Do all your work. So in 6 days is when you're to do. So 6 means all the work you are to do. You're to do all your work in 6 days. Interestingly enough, also in Ruth, chapter 3 verse 16 and 18, Boaz gave Ruth 6 measures of barley and said, I will do everything I need to do this day. In 1 Corinthians 3, verses 12 to 13, I think these are the things that we know. Paul says we have wood, hay, stubble. My mind's gone blank at the moment. This is talked about when he declares all the works, the fruits of the Spirit, the works, so love, joy, peace, etc. So these ones here are all about works. So you can see that what it is the number 6 is a symbol of all the works a man can do, the works of men. That's why you have the mark of the beast, which is what? 6, 6, 6. All the work a man can do. That's the work of the Antichrist. Okay, so we know that this means that therefore we can say that this group of witnesses will have their works tested as they uphold what? Righteousness, because we know they upheld the veil. And the veil, and the Bible doesn't tell us what that fine linen veil is, not just something random. It actually tells you what it means. In Revelation 19 verse 8 it says, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, what was around the sanctuary, clean and white, for fine linen is what? The righteousness of saints. So this group is going to have their righteousness tested. Now, who is this group? That was my next question when I looked at it. Who is this group? You know, there's an interesting little story in the Song of Solomon. In chapter 3, verse 7, it says, behold his bed, which is Solomon's. Now remember, this is an allegory, so it's using symbolic language. Which is Solomon's, 80 valiant men are about the valiant of Israel. What's 80 mean? What's that number mean? 60. So here we find the king's bed, which is where he resides. Where does God reside? In the sanctuary. Has 60 men around it. Do you think that's a coincidence? No. So here Solomon is telling us something about the sanctuary. And it's telling us more specifically something about the pillars around the sanctuary. He says, they all hold swords, being experts at war. Every man hath his sword upon his thigh. So it says, they all hold swords, being experts at war. What's a sword a symbol of in the Bible? I won't go into all the symbols. I'm just going to tell you if you want to look them up afterwards. What's a sword the symbol of in the Bible? Experts at what? They know their word and they know how to use it. And he has, the sword is upon his thigh. Let's go. So, because of the fear of the night. Now, why? What have they got to be afraid of? Remember, we're talking about what these, who is this night? Gives you the clue. In Jeremiah 30, verse 5, it says, for thus saith the Lord, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Ask now whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore I do see every man with his hand upon his loins, as a woman travail, and all faces have turned paleness. Alas, for that great day. Whenever you hear that phrase, you know it's talking about the second coming. So that none shall be like it, even at that time of Jacob's trouble shall he be saved out of it. So here we know that this group is going to be going through what? The time of Jacob's trouble. And just to verify it, there's another verse. Psalms 91 verse 3 says, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler. From where? The noisome pestilence. What noisome pestilence is he talking about? You ever heard of the 7 last plagues? The first plague is the noisome pestilence, the noisome sore. He shall cover his feathers under his wings, thou shalt trust, the truth shall be thy shield and buckler. It's talking about the word. Thou shalt be afraid of the terror by night. There's the same phrase, so we know that it's joined to it. The terror by night, nor the arrows that flieth by day, nor of the pestilence that walketh in darkness. Now, what's one of the last plagues? You have the great darkness. Nor the destruction that wasteth at noonday. The sun will scorch men with great heat. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, 10,000 at thy right hand, but none shall come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold the reward of the wicked. You know, even in Revelation it talks about the 144,000. It says that him that overcometh, so him that overcomes at the end. So do you overcome at the beginning or overcome at the end? At the end. He that overcometh, I will what? Make a pillar in the temple of my God. So here you see that the outside of the sanctuary is all about the 144,000. The 144,000 are defenders of the sanctuary. Has the sanctuary ever been under attack? Oh, you bet your bottom dollar it has, even in amongst our own church. You ever heard of Desmond Ford? Good old Desmond said that there was no sanctuary. And it was one of the pillars of our faith. He just said there are phases of ministry. How he got that, I don't know, but that's the way he expounded it. And yet, there's still more. Let's have a look here now. Let's have a look there. The Bible specifically mentions that there are 4 pillars to make the gate, holding up a coloured veil. So this is when we're starting to walk our way through the sanctuary. So now we have to look. Remember, numbers mean something? What does number 4 mean? So there are all the verses there if you'd like to look at it. I'll just look at 1 or 2. On the 4th day, what did God make? If you remember some of my sermons, you remember that everyone says on the 4th day God made the sun, moon and stars. Well, no. Read the verse. What does it say that he made on the 4th day? Yes, the sun, moon and stars, but there was a purpose for them. Let them be lights in the firmaments, and let them be for what? For signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. God created on the 4th day time. So that's what he created on the 4th day. Now, God is consistent. On the, fourth commandment. What is the fourth commandment all about? The Sabbath day, the period of time. You see how God is consistent everywhere? So you can see it, all the fourth commandment is about a period of time. And we find here, just so you get the idea, in Genesis 15 verse 16 it says, "But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again." This is talking about the children of Israel when they were going to come and possess Canaan. "For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." So when was their time up? By the fourth generation. Remember Jesus said, unto the third and unto the fourth generation, I will then visit the iniquity. So you can see that whenever you see the number 4, it means there's an allotted period of time. How many angels are there? 4 angels holding back the 4 winds. Means they're only going to hold them back for a period of time. So when we see the number 4, it's the little messages that are inside those passages we read. Now the veil also represents Christ in Hebrews 10:20. As by a new living way which Christ hath considered for us through the veil, that is to say his flesh, having a high priest over the house of God. So here we see that we're going to have 4 pillars. What is a pillar witness? What is a pillar again? It's a witness. So we're going to have 4 witnesses to Christ. Do we have 4 witnesses? You ever wondered why we only have 4 Gospels and not 12? We have 12 disciples. Couldn't all of them have told a story? But we only have 4. And not only that, 4 of them are first-hand accounts. The other 2, which are Matthew and John, the other 2 are second-hand accounts, which are Luke and Mark. Why did God do something like that? Well, we have a look, and I'm not going to go into this. This is once where I could have easily diverted again. This is all about the layout of the congregation around the sanctuary. Each of them had a banner and like a standard. And you find one has that of an ox, one has that of a lion, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Judah was the head. The south and the south and the north. One is a man, one is an eagle. Some people debate that. You can actually debate that because it was the emblem of Dan was a serpent, but that's also a symbol of God as well. So there's a reason for this. I'm going down this path. It is because with the 4 Gospels, you ever wondered why they all sometimes tell the similar story but tell it differently? The book of Matthew is all about Christ as the king, the line of the tribe of Judah. It gives the lineage. That's why Matthew gives us the lineage of Christ from all the way from Adam, all the way down through David, all the way down to him. Whereas Mark's focus is on Jesus, the burden bearer. And you'll find that Luke focuses on Jesus, the man. That's why you have people who are non-Trinitarian, who believe that Jesus was a man and only God, always focus on the book of Luke, because that's where Luke focuses. And they ignore John, because John focuses on Christ as God. His opening statement, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So you find that we have 2 Jews, 2 Gentiles, testifying to the life of Christ and the different aspects of that life, of him as the king, as the burden bearer, as the Son of Man, and as God. And that's the reason why we don't have 12. So now we move a little bit further into the sanctuary, because I don't want to be here all day. We're just going to focus on the pillars, like I said. So we here have 5 pillars as we go into the sanctuary. Now, I found this rather interesting. Why 5? Why not stick with 4? Because there's 4 everywhere else. Because, once again, 5 has a meaning. Let's have a look. In Genesis 1:20, on the fifth day, what did God create? He created all the creatures that had breath, which is life, the breath of life. That's right. So on the fifth day, God created, he first introduced really life into the world. In Genesis 4, I'm giving you all the text to help you understand. In Genesis 41 verses 34, it says, Joseph held back how much of the grain? 1/5, that they may preserve life. And that's what he says, that we may preserve life, that we do not die. Take 1/5. In the parable of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, why do you think God chose 5 and not, is he saying only half of us are going to make it and the other half aren't? The number 5 means something. So the number 5 for them was it a life and death issue that they were dealing with or not? Yeah, 5 lived and 5 didn't. When David picked up stones to kill Goliath, how many did he choose? He picked up 5. Why? Because he was going to face a life and death issue. He was fighting for his life. I missed Exodus 20, verse 12. This is an interesting one. Out of all the commandments, this is the only commandment. The 5th commandment says, honour thy father and thy mother. And it follows with a promise that your days may be what? Long. You will have long life. He adds that to it. And then you have the rich man and Lazarus when he says, let me go into my brethren. How many brethren did he have? He said, let me go to my 5 brethren, that I might tell them that they may avoid this place. So in other words, that they may have life and not perish. So we see the number 5 here represents life. Now, before I continue on, I know some people, when I've done number symbols, they go, oh, but I think it means this and that. Remember I said the numbers have multiple meanings. You might think that it means this, and you're most probably right. I'm just going to show you one aspect of how this means. So I'm just giving you Bible verses, obviously, just to back this up. So remember, we know that these are pillars, remember? So we have 5 pillars, 5 witnesses, that we may have a sanctified life. Because remember, we're going into the holy place. How many people have written the book of the Bible? How many people have written the New Testament? Well, you can discard the book of Acts for the moment, because the book of Acts is written by Luke, which is just an extension of the book of Luke. And it's really not an epistle, it's more of a continuation of the church's history, and introduces us to Paul. And of course it has instruction, I'm not saying it's useless. But when we come to the epistles, we find that we have Paul, who wrote Romans all the way through to Hebrews. We have James, who wrote the book of James. We have Peter, who wrote the 1st and 2nd Peter. We have John, who wrote 1st, 2nd and 3rd John. And we have Jude, who wrote the book of Jude. I've always wondered, why not 12 epistles? Because we have 12 disciples. Why not 12 gospels? We've only got these odd bods. Why don't we have the book of Nathaniel, or the book of, pick another disciple. Thomas, the book of Thomas. There are only 5. There are only 5. And yet, it seems that what God seems to be doing is he's constructing, in the New Testament, a picture of the sanctuary. We have 4 predicting the Gospels, and then we have 5 writers telling us how to live a sanctified life, how to get into the holy place. So now we can see that really the whole New Testament is really just a construction of the sanctuary. From Matthew through to the book of Jude, it's all about the outer court and how to get in. Revelation starts with the holy place all the way through to the most holy in 1844 and beyond. So really the New Testament is just the sanctuary. Because here we have Matthew to Jude, here we have the 7 churches, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, all to do in Revelation, up until Revelation chapter 11, and Revelations 12 to 20 is all about the most holy place. But before we go, there's still another pillar. And I want to show you just quickly this one here, because if I kept on going, we'd just keep on going. What does the number 2 represent in the Bible? I think this is a very easy one to find, because even Jesus, would say, verily, verily. He'd always repeat himself twice. In Genesis chapter 41, verse 2, it says, "And for that dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass." So whenever you see something repeated, it means it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's surely. That's why he'd say, "Simon, Simon, Satan desired to have you." He would always repeat himself twice. Well, there are 2 more pillars inside before we move on to the next pillars, and that's the 2 pillars of bread. 2 pillars of bread on the table of showbread. It talks about here in Revelation chapter 2, it says, "And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses." And who are these witnesses? The witness is, of course, the bread, which is the Word of God. That's right. So we have the Old and the New Testament. So, and you can see it just verifies that and it says they shall bear, and these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of earth. So we find that we have the 1260-day prophecy where the Word was clothed in sackcloth. So once again, you can see going through the sanctuary is just following it step by step by step by step. To unlock the book of Revelation, it's impossible without understanding the sanctuary. And just for curiosity's sake, you've got 2 piles of 6. How many books in the Bible are there? 66. That's how come I know the Apocrypha, the other books aren't meant to be in there. God said there's 66. Verily, verily, my 2 witnesses. Okay, so now we come up to the most holy place. You see we have 4 pillars there. So what do we know again? What does 4 mean? Yeah, we've got pillars as witnesses, but the number 4 means there's a time. So we're coming up to a period of time. An allotted period of time as we go into the most holy place. So is the most holy place going to last forever? No, it's saying it's only for a period of time this is going to be available. And who are these 4 witnesses to tell us now? Remember what's the purpose of the most holy? Glorification. We're going to make it the end. We're going to have new bodies. Okay? So, do we have witnesses of glorification? Well, yes, we do. Can you think of them before I put them up? Can you think of any? We have 4 witnesses testify that we're going to heaven. You're getting the idea. Yes. Enoch, Elijah. These are the only ones mentioned. Enoch, Elijah, Moses, and Jesus himself. What do we notice about these 2? Well, these 4. 2 of them went to heaven without seeing death. The other 2 with seeing death. So we're going to see now that whatever's going to happen, we're going to have a group that are not going to see death, and there are another group that are going to be raised from the dead. And do we find that in Revelation? Well, you bet your bottom dollar we do. In Revelation 12, we find the 144,000, and we find the second resurrection in Revelation chapter 20. So we find that these pillars are a symbol of the promise of the things to come, that we're going to make it. But also, do you notice, on the veil there were angels embroidered onto it. So if I was walking through there, how many angels do I go through? I go through 3 angels. Well, you can say, argue, I only go through 1. But what I'm saying is there are 3 ways into the sanctuary, the 3 angels. There are 3 angels. Do we find 3 angels in Revelation? Yes, we do. So 3 angels preparing the way for us to go into the most holy. Without studying the sanctuary, you would never pick it up. So where are we in the stream of time? You know, we know that we've gone past 1844. There are no more dates. So what did I say? No more dates. No more. People have tried. People have tried to pick up dates. People have tried to make things, you know, try and make the prophecies fit, because we all want to know when Jesus comes back. But from here on in, we only have no more dates. We only have signs. However, do you think Satan is keen to know when Jesus is coming back? You bet your bottom dollar. He wants to be prepared. And does Satan know the future? Not really. He can take a few educated guesses, but he can't really. So where is he getting his information from? He has to get it from here, just like you and I do. So do you think he studies the Bible? Oh, he studies it better than you and I do. He knows this thing back to front. He actually quoted it to Christ when he was giving him the temptation in the wilderness. He knows his Bible, and he knew exactly what to include and what to miss out. So Satan is trying to preempt Christ's coming, or try to do whatever he can do to hinder Christ's coming. So you're going to find that whenever something momentous happens, Satan is always busy. So what's a sign that something momentous is about to happen? Satan is busy. He's doing his thing. So you're going to find that prior to 1844, he knew that date. He knew what was coming. So he was preparing all right. And so we find that with the Advent movement being born out of the Millerite movement in 1844, did Lucifer have a few counterfeits in tow? You bet your bottom dollar. No offence to my Mormon brothers or the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were one of the deceptions that came about, that Lucifer came up with. And there were also false female prophets. You know, we have the Seventh-day Adventists, we have Ellen White. We believe I do. She believes she's a prophet. But, you know, the others also had prophets. You know, the Mormons have prophet in the Book of Mormon. You have Jehovah's Witnesses. You have Blavatsky, who are the Church of Satan. All these things came up around exactly that time. So we can see that when Satan's active, we know something's coming. Whether it comes or not, he's getting ready. So we find that after 1844, and he knew Jesus wasn't coming back then, but he was getting ready. In 1848, out came good old Karl Marx with his Communist Manifesto. We have good old Charles Darwin coming up with the Book of Origins. All these were to counteract God's work. And yet in the first angel's message it says, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, 1844. Worship him who made heaven and earth, whom Charles Darwin opposes, who made the fountain and seat of water. Communist Manifesto, which is atheism. All these things rose up right at that time, right when Jesus, where the 1844 message came up. And then after that, when were we born? 1863 is the official birth date of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So he was getting things set up for when we would arrive. So, do you think that when America rose to power, right on time once again, because we know it's the second beast in Revelation 13, in 1867 through to 1913, America's rising and rising and rising was becoming a superpower. And remember, Ellen White was actually telling us that America was going to be a superpower when in the middle of the Civil War, when it looked like America was going to split and fold. Hence, we can rely on the Bible. So Satan saw this power rising, so he goes, I had better get ready, because who knows when Jesus is coming again soon. So when do you think he would be preparing for something? When is the next time he would expect maybe Jesus might be doing something? Perhaps on the anniversary of 1844? So what happens around 1944, 100 years later? We have Hitler marching through Europe, trying to reunite the world before Jesus comes again. He was trying to establish the Third Reich, which means the Third Kingdom or the Third Holy Roman Empire. That's what he was trying to set up. And then you had Stalin and Mao, all communist countries rising to power at that one time. Of course, nothing happened, so Satan goes, he's not coming again next, so when would be the next time that Jesus might appear? So you can see he's always doing something. He's ever ready. You know, when the 9/11 attack happened in 2001, you know, those were momentous to change it. What was the catchphrase? The world will never be the same. Okay? So there's a momentous change has come. And interestingly enough, you add 160 years, the fourth generation, when would that take us to? 2003 or 2004. So Satan was going, perhaps the fourth generation after 1844. So perhaps I should get myself ready for when that comes. So he sets up 9/11 and the world governments are changed forever. You remember the time when you didn't have to, you know, you could get on the plane with scissors and hand cream? When you could, you know, the world was a much freer place back then. Our civil liberties have been disappearing ever since that date. And I remember a friend of mine saying, you know, could this be the beginning of the mark of the beast? It could have been. But it wasn't. We weren't ready. I don't believe we were ready. So let's have a look at the next date that he's primarily looking at. That's been and gone. Seventh-day Adventists were found when? 1863. So what's the next date that Satan would be looking forward to? Now, this is Satan. I'm not date setting. I'm just saying Satan's getting ready because he doesn't know when Jesus is coming. You add 160 years on to 1863. When does that come to? 2023. Do you think it's a coincidence that all of a sudden right now we have the coronavirus? That never in the human history of the world have all the economies shut down. They never did it for the Spanish flu or any other disease. But right now they have decided, we're shutting the world down. Why? Because they're getting ready for something. You know, how long do you think economies can last with all these shutdowns that are happening in the world? And it's been going on how long now? Nearly 2 years. You know, they had a COVID plan. This is just a little digression. A COVID plan out in Germany where if they had a pandemic, what they would do, they said they would shut down the world for 3 years. So don't expect to be going anywhere soon. And we're following that to the letter. And you know what they said will happen next? Financial collapse. And when a financial collapse comes, are people more malleable to accept a new order? You bet your bottom dollar they are. So we can find that Satan is getting ready for something, but are we? You know, I speak to Adventists, you know, in other churches. They're just telling me they can't wait for this pandemic to be over so they can just go back to the way things were. But I can tell you now, that ain't happening. Because they're using the same language they did in 9/11. They're saying the world will never be the same. Whenever they say that, you know there's something big coming. You know, we have a hell to shun and a heaven to win. You know, and most of us, like I said, you know, when we think about studying the Word of God, most of us love to study our entertainment, our games, our devices, our jobs, whatever it may be. You know, Satan's no fool. Which group of people is he most keen to keep distracted and occupied until this thing blows over? That's right. It's us. And I believe he's done a wonderful job. It's a shame he's not on our side. He has done a wonderful job. We are distracted, preoccupied, And quite frankly, we're not raising our heads up, we're keeping our heads down. You know, we're supposed to be one of the 144,000, one of those pillars, the defenders of the faith. And I barely say, most of us hardly know anything about the sanctuary and how it works, why it's there. This is the message we're supposed to give to the world. We're supposed to defend it. We're supposed to defend this. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but governments around the world are becoming more and more anti-Christian. You know, they don't attack Ramadan, they don't attack any other religion. They attack Christmas, they attack Easter, they attack everything else. If that doesn't tell you that who they're focusing on, that should be another wake-up warning. On that happy note, what was the promise God? He said, I will through it. And, you know, there's going to come a time, and I believe it's not far, that we are going to be praying. Remember when the Day of Atonement comes to an end, the smoke fills the sanctuary. You know, when the mark of the beast comes, do you think you'll be praying? I know I will be. Because what wakes the foolish virgins up? It's the sound of Christ's second coming. And at that stage, do you want to know if you're a foolish virgin or a wise virgin, or would you rather figure out beforehand? I'd rather figure out beforehand if I'm a wise or a foolish virgin. So we need to return to the Word of God, trust in Christ, because He is I haven't mentioned Him through this, but He is in every step of the way. He is every step of the way we go. You find in the sanctuary, Christ is riddled through it all. But it's not riddled, it's not all about Christ, it's all about Christ and you and what Christ is going to do for you. The cleansing of the sanctuary is cleansing you. So, my admonition for you today is to lift up our heads and look at the signs of the times, because Christ is coming.